Hello and welcome, this is a new tutorial for my free Blender JMesh Tools add-on, and in this we are going to create a mesh that is a bit more complicated. But anyway, we are starting with the default cube, and here's the JMesh panel that you see in the sidebar when you have the add-on installed. I added some simple materials to the project, this black one, then an emissive material. You see I have the bloom enabled in the render properties. This is a simple metal, and then we have a rubber or plastic material in red and blue. No fancy stuff. Okay, so let's get started with this cube. I go to edit mode. I also enable my screencast keys add-on so that you can see which keys I'm pressing and the mouse buttons. Okay, and then we can go ahead and press S followed by Z to scale down the mesh in Z direction. Now scale it along the Y-axis by pressing S. Oops, this was extruding, not scaling, sorry. So I guess I have to remove these duplicated vertices now. Okay, I now can press S followed by Y to scale. We do this slowly, step by step. The next thing I want to add is a bevel for these edges here. So I select these and press Ctrl and B to add a simple bevel. And then I select the face at the front and press the I key to add a small inset. And then I select the Extrude, Dissolve and Inset tool. I use this one and not the default Extrude tool because I think I will need it in a moment, but as you can see, the gizmo is pointing to the inside of the mesh. So it seems like the normals are facing in the wrong direction. So check here in the overlays to display the normals, and yes, they're pointing into the wrong direction. We have to press Shift and N to recalculate. And this is always good when this happens because then I can show you how to fix it. Alright, but now let's continue with the fun parts. First I go to object mode, then I press this bevel button, and then you get this nice shading and sharp edges, and I decrease the bevel width to make the edges even more sharp and crisp. Okay, the next step will be to add some kind of round parts with knobs or screws to the front. To do this, I activate the primitive mode. And for the primitive type, I select the circle and the operation is set to union. Then I activate the mirror for the x-axis. And I start with snapping to the grid so that I can start with the primitive centered. And here you can see a new feature, the gizmo, with that I can move around the primitive. Okay, the mirrored part is moved in the opposite direction, and now I can also press the S key to resize the primitive. Now I snap the view and then use the gizmo to move the primitive a bit to the front, and then I press E to extrude. Great, and now press Ctrl and the left mouse button, and the new objects are unioned with the existing mesh. Okay, looks nice. Now I go to edit mode and select these faces. And then press the I key to add an inset. Alright, and then I use the selected extrude tool to extrude these faces to the inside. Okay, looks nice. Now let's continue with this object, a simple screw head that is a bit similar to the one that we created in the previous part. And I want to snap it to the face that I just extruded. Again, JMesh Tools helps us a bit. I go to edit mode and select this face and press the button cursor to active. And this does exactly what it says. It brings the cursor to the active part of the mesh, in this case the face. And then I select the screw in object mode and press Shift and S and choose selection to cursor. Okay, nicely snapped. Then I go to edit mode, press A to select all, then I press G followed by Y and move it a bit to the outside. Okay, the size is quite good, perhaps we scale it a tiny bit. Yeah, like that. And then I go to object mode and press the mirror button to bring the object to the other side as well. And I think I apply the mirror, because then I can rotate this separately to let it appear a bit more random. Okay, let's continue to add some nice slices and cuts. For instance, at this area here at the front, I go to the polyline primitive. The operation is set to create, and I snap to the grid to create this kind of shapes with the mirror activated. And then I use the Gizmo to move it to the center, but I disable the snapping. I move it to the center, and then I press the E key to extrude it. Alright, then I press Ctrl and left click to create these two objects. Then I switch to edit mode, press A to select all, and then S to scale down the meshes. The object is a bit sunken into the mesh, so I scale from this side so that I can see the size. And then I scale it up again in Y direction. And this is now my cutter object that I want to use for slicing, so I select it in object mode. The target is the other mesh, and I press slice. Isn't that simple? Now we have two new objects sliced into the target, and we can assign the metal material, for instance. And then I switch to edit mode again and dissolve these edges, we don't need them. Press the keys Ctrl and X to dissolve. And then we can go ahead and, for example, select these edges and press Ctrl and B to add simple bevels. A very nice effect for these sharp edges. Okay, what's next? How about adding some simple metallic buttons to the top? I will use again the primitive mode, this time a rectangle and the slice operation. And be sure to have the X mirror enabled. Like that, and then I just paint it onto the mesh, onto the top face. Then move it a bit to the center by using the new Gizmo, which I love by the way, and then I press E to extrude into the object. And then Ctrl left click to slice. I assign again the metal material, and again for these inner edges I add some simple bevels. Very nice. Now I think some holes could be quite interesting for these buttons or panels. So I select the circle primitive and the difference operation, then draw this circle onto the metal parts, but before I enable snapping to the grid so that I can start from the center. And then I press S to scale. And that's a good size, I think. So I can just press Ctrl left click to cut into the mesh. Okay, nice holes. You see it is added to the other side as well because we had the X mirror enabled. Alright, let's add another cut with the rectangle, but this time I want to start drawing from the center, so I press F to enable this option. Then I start, snap to the grid, and you see this time I use the mirror for the Y-axis. Okay, move it a bit more to the center, and then press the E key to extrude, and Ctrl left click to cut. I like to move these new faces a bit more into the mesh, so I select them, use face selection, and press G followed by Z to move them to the inside of the mesh. That's better. It's a bit flickering because we have some duplicated faces here, but I will remove them later on. In the next step, I want again to cut into the mesh again with rectangles, but this time with the X mirror enabled. Like that, again extrude and Ctrl left click to cut. Okay, perhaps we can add an inset to the face here at the center. I go to Edit Mode and Face Selection, select the face and press I to add the inset. And then use the selected Extrude tool to bring the face to the inside. Again, I want to have some kind of panels here at the sides. So I slice in some rectangles. You see, it's all the same now. You just add more and more details to make the mesh look really interesting. I extrude and then I press Ctrl left click to add the slice. Then with the view snapped, I use the gizmo to move the primitive to that location, so I can reuse the primitive to add another slice. I press Ctrl and J to join the sliced objects, and again I assign the metal material. Then I will add some bevels for these sharp edges at the outside. And I'm very happy with this so far. And now I want to slice some small buttons into the mesh at this location. So what I do is to create a box. X mirror is enabled. And after creating this, I go ahead and press the Array button. Then this dialog pops up. I define the offset for the Y direction first, and then increase the item count. Okay, looks good. Press Escape to close the dialog. I don't know if I need this, but I apply the Array modifier, and then I just press Slice. And look at this, now we can assign the metal again, add some bevels and have a nice effect. I switched to solid viewport shading because we are going to add an emissive material now. And I don't want to see this all the time while modeling. I will add some new slices around here, and for these I will assign an emissive material to create some kind of LEDs. And for slicing, again I reuse the primitive. I join these by pressing Ctrl and J and assign the emissive material. You can see this here when I switch to the material preview. I really like the emission, so let's add some more slices here at the front. I use rectangle and the X mirror, extrude it very slightly, and create the slice. Then I assign the emissive material and enable the material preview again. Now, I don't know what this actually is, but it looks good. Perhaps add some use cases for this thing to the comments. Would be interesting. Okay, next feature. I have the idea to add some cables or wires. This means we need some connectors around here, and I will use the circle and the union operation. But you know what, before I do this, I will remove these flickering duplicated faces. Okay, this is better and we can go ahead. So draw the circles with the X mirror enabled and press E to extrude to the inside. Ctrl left click and we get these unioned cylinders. I see some shading issues here, but I think we can get rid of it when we increase the angle of these edges here. We can cut in a new edge using the knife tool and then dissolve the other one. Yeah, that's better, and I do the same for the other side as well. Alright, now make the edges a bit more crisp, decrease the offset of the bevel. And then I go to edit mode, select these faces, and then press the I key to add insets. And the inner faces I can extrude now to the inside. Great, now we have the connectors. And we can continue adding the wires. For this I use the curve primitive. With that I can click onto the mesh for setting the starting point, like here, and then I click again to add the curve. Now you can select the handles of the curve and press Alt and S to scale it. Now we'll move around the points, then also subdivide to add more points to the curve. With the 2 points selected, right click and choose subdivide. And now you have another handle that you can also move around by pressing the G key. I speed this up a bit because this is just moving around the points to find an interesting shape. Okay, I'm happy with that. Now I can assign the red plastic material. Okay, now I duplicate this wire to add another one on the right side. I move around the points again, and in the end I assign a blue material. Okay, are we happy? Yes, we are happy. The only thing I want to add is a tiny light knob at the front. I used the circle primitive, no mirror this time, and the operation will be a slice. Great, I assign the light metal. Then I switch to edit mode, face selection, and add an inset for this face. Press the I key to add the inset, and I add a second material, and this will be the emission, and assign it to the inner face. I extrude this part a bit to the inside, and I call it done. I uploaded the blend file to my Patreon, the link is added to the description below, and you can get it from there for free. Okay guys, if you liked the video and my channel, then don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Follow me on my social media on Instagram, Twitter or Facebook. Support the development of the add-on, perhaps by being my patron, this would also be great, and I see you in the next one on Jayanam.